Hello guys, welcome to another session in our TestNG series training. Okay, in this session we'll look at groupings feature of a TestNG. Okay, so let's get started. Here I have created a new class in our existing project and named that existing class as place online order test. Okay, and I have written couple of test methods as well here. Okay, unlike our previous class annotation test, which has all these extra annotations as before suit, before test, right, before classes. This new class doesn't have any of those annotations. Instead, it has only test annotation. Okay, in order to look at our grouping exercise or grouping feature, we just need this test annotation. Okay, there is no harm in having all these additional annotations, but to avoid the extra console messages, I have removed those annotations. Alright, and if you look at this particular test class here, we have multiple methods. Okay, and we'll go through each method quickly. Okay, so as the name says, this is an online ordering test in which user will be performing login first, then user will be searching for a particular item and adding item to the cart, and then going to the cart and completing the payment. Finally, we are looking at the confirmation of the order and capturing order number. So these are the couple of methods which are written in the sequential order which every one of us do in order to place an order in any of the e-commerce applications. Okay, so when we say e-commerce, so Amazon is e-commerce, right? And any online websites where we go, log in, look for an item and purchase that item, that is called an e-commerce application. Okay, now let us run this and see what is getting printed, right, from this one. So we have run this test, right, and we are seeing couple of messages getting printed onto our console, and these messages are from this particular class which we ran, and no other message from this another class annotation test has been printed, which is what we want. We want to focus only on this particular class over here. Okay, and if we look at these messages that got printed are not in the sequential order in which we have written. Okay, here our first method has the print message as performing user login, whereas we are seeing something else which is adding item to the cart. Okay, how to execute these methods in a sequential order, which we will see in the following classes, but for this grouping purposes we need not have to bother about the order of execution here. Okay, all right, now let us consider few scenarios, right, where we particularly use this grouping. All right, so let us go back to our presentation and go to the next slide. Okay, and for grouping, say suppose we have login tests. Okay, and these login tests can be of two types: one positive test and the other as negative tests. Okay, so in real time world, whenever we test a login on a application, right, say suppose take Amazon itself, right, so to perform or to test login on an Amazon website, we will be using these following scenarios. I have written 3 for positive and 3 for negative, but in real time we will be using more that we can think of. Okay, but to stick to this particular tutorial, I have considered only 6 scenarios to explain, 3 for positive and 3 for negative. Okay, when we test for positive scenarios, these are the 3 scenarios which we will be using, right? First one is valid username and password with alphanumeric characters. So we are saying username and password can be anything in alphanumeric characters, right? And since we are saying valid, that means the user has already registered and his username and password are having only alphanumeric characters. Similarly, the second scenario where we have used some special characters in username and password. So there will be limited number of special characters which are usually allowed for username and password, and this scenario can be tested using those special characters along with alphanumeric characters. Okay, the third scenario, it can be a combination of both alphanumeric and special characters. All right, so the next set of scenarios we have for negative cases are invalid username. That means that particular username which we are trying to log in into that application is not registered previously. Okay, similarly an invalid password. So we have a valid username registered, but invalid, we are passing invalid password at the time of login. Okay, and the third scenario, we are using both invalid username and password. Okay, so these are the 6 scenarios which we can use to test our login functionality. So at the moment we have only one login test method over here, and in right, in real time testing environment, we will be having multiple login tests to test all these scenarios we have just discussed over here. Okay, so to replicate this test cases in our test class, I will be adding 5 more test methods over here, and I will say valid login test 1, or I will call it valid login test 2. Okay, performing user login with user 2. I will copy it down and I will have the same method overwritten with a new method name and message. Okay, likewise I will now have another 3 methods another 3 methods for invalid login. Okay, for that I will say invalid login test 3, invalid login test 1, sorry 2, and invalid login test 1, and performing invalid user login, performing invalid password login. Let us remove with user 2 message, invalid user login, invalid password login, invalid user and password login. Right. So now we have these 6 tests written for just login functionality, right? So we are going to test our login functionality using these 6 scenarios: 3 for positive logins and 3 for negative logins. All right, so now when we run this test class, right, when we run this test class, this is going to run all the methods that are written within this file. Okay, let us run that again, and we see these are new methods messages also getting printed to the console. Okay, performing login, performing invalid login, performing user login with user number 2, 3, and so on. But there will be scenarios when we want to test only the login test cases, right? Currently this particular test is logging in, and also it is going to place an order, but we can be asked sometimes at our workplaces to test only the login functionality, that is to execute only the positive and negative test cases for a login. Okay, so in that cases, how can we identify these login test cases within this test class and run only those test cases, right? That will be a big question. So in order to solve that issue, groupings has been used or introduced in TestNG, where we can particularly group a set of test methods and specify those test methods only to run from our testng.xml. So let us group these test cases, right? So since these are all related to login, I am going to name that particular method with a group called login. Okay, groups. And how do we write that? So in the @test, so @test method accepts a couple of couple of attributes, and one of them is groups. So we can specify groups is equal to login. Okay, now we are specifying this particular test belongs to a group called login. Okay, and let me copy the same thing below for rest of the 5 login methods. Right, we have named these groups as login and assigned those to only the login test methods. So if we include that login or this group login to this test which is search item, then that particular method will also become part of login. So in this case it is not valid, right? So this is not performing any login, but it is just searching for an item. So we do not want to include that unrelated to test to our login group. Okay, now in order to run only these test cases, right, these test cases which are related to login, we'll go now to testng.xml, and we will add another tag under suit to include or to execute only test cases from place online order test, and that to execute only login tests. So currently our testng.xml has the test class as annotation test. Now since we are going to test only place online order, let us change that class name over here, or let us make a copy of this and add it over here, and here change the name of the test to online order test. Okay, and class name we have to change that to place online order test, and I am selecting this from the suggested list. Okay, now we have added this test also to the testng.xml. So we do not want to run this for the moment, so let us do one thing. Let us comment that one or remove that one completely, as we are no longer going to run annotation test. Okay, so now this testng.xml has only one test, and that test is pointing to our class place online order test. Okay, in order to specify which group of test cases to run, we will be giving that at suite level. Okay, so by adding a new tag called groups, right? We now have added group, and this group again have another tag which we can use, that is run. Okay, we can use this run tag, and within that run tag we can specify which test to be included. Okay, here I will be saying include name, and the name of our group is login. Okay, we have given the group name as login in our place online order test, and that is the name I have given to include in this particular test run. So when we run our testng.xml, it is going to run at least, or the expectation is to run only the tests that have been tagged as login or grouped as login. Okay, let us now run our testng.xml and see the output. Right, so here now we see couple of messages getting printed or got printed on the console upon finishing the execution. Okay, and if we notice, we have 6 messages here, and those 6 messages are related to our login test. None of the other messages, right, like for search for an item, adding item, etc., have been printed to the console, because we have specified our testng to run only the test methods that have named a group called login. Okay, now these groups we have given at suite level, right? We have written these groups under suite tag, but the same groups tags can be written under tests as well. So what is the difference? So when we write it under suite, it is going to apply that rule of executing only this particular group across all the tests defined, right? And now we are confining that test to only this particular test. Okay, say suppose if we have annotation test as well here, then this logic or this filtering won't be applied on that annotation test. But if we have specified at a suite level, then it will apply this filter on annotation test as well. Okay, so irrespective of where we give suite or test, since we have only one test defined, so there won't be any change in the console output, and we'll be seeing the same messages getting printed. Okay, now we can actually make part of a particular method can be part of multiple multiple groups. Say suppose we want to name these other test methods also, or group these other test methods as well to some other group. Okay, say suppose we'll say groups, right? And we will say online test, online order test, end to end to end. So when we say end to end, it is going to perform login and do rest of the steps until noting down the confirmation number. Okay, so I will copy this down to other methods as well. Now we have this group applied to rest of the methods, and like I said before, one method can be allocated to multiple groups, right? So with that, what we can do is we can assign this valid test case scenario, valid login test scenario to that new group which we have just created, right? And how can we do that? We can simply add that other group into a curly brace. Okay, since we have multiple group names associated or linked to this particular method, we have to separate those group names with a comma, and since it is more than one, we are packing them, or we are including them into a curly brace. Okay, now let us take this online order test end to end and assign that to this group. Okay, now when we run our testng.xml by giving this as the group name to include, our expectation is it should execute the test cases end to end, and it should not include these other positive and negative tests we have written for login. Okay, now let's change this group name to online order test end to end. Okay, and now let us run this. See, now it has printed the end-to-end steps that are included for placing an online order, but it didn't include anything related to the negative login tests or the remaining two positive tests we were doing for login alone. Okay, in real time, where do we use grouping? Right, in real time we will be giving some group names like this: login, online order test, right? Anything to group one particular set of test cases. Okay, so and also along with this one, we will be having multiple tags or multiple group names as smoke test, right? We'll be specifying smoke, and we'll be having regression, and the commonly used other tag is end to end. Okay, so by giving the names as smoke, regression, end to end, what are we doing, or what are we saying to TestNG is to make this particular test part of a smoke test, part of a regression test, part of an end to end test. Okay, and not every test case has to be part of smoke or regression or end to end, right? Smoke testing can have a subset of total number of test cases we have. Say suppose we have 100 test cases, not every 100, every one of those 100 test cases has to be tagged as smoke. So approximately we can have around 25 or so, for an example, right, have this smoke test tag or group name, right? And couple of more test cases, maybe 50 or 60 test cases can be part of this regression group, and maybe another 15 or 20 test cases can be part of this end-to-end execution. So which test case has to come under smoke, under regression, under end-to-end is another thing which we as a team decide and come up with this decision, like this particular set of test cases has to be executed every day as smoke test, or we will as a team decide like these 50 or 60 test cases should be run before every release or every install as part of regression, or we can specify this particular set of test cases can be part of end-to-end which can be executed before every install or on ad hoc requests. Okay, so these groups are very useful in actually grouping the test cases and running those test cases for any debugging purposes, maybe, right? Someone might say like login has failed, so user has reported login failures, and they can come to us and say, hey tester, can you run test cases only for login and see if our tests are passing or failing. So since we have this login group specified, we will simply change this to login, and we will run only those set of test cases, and we will be giving a report to the person who asked us, right? And also someone might say like placing the order, maybe cart screen is broken, can you see if that is happening in our lower environment too? Then we can go back here and we can say online order test end to end, and we can run and give that report to that person saying it has run in the lower environments, and here is the report, could be passed or failed. Okay, hope you understood this grouping concept, so which is very helpful. And that's it for this session. See you in the next video. Thank you.